In this video, I'll take a look at the Lumix 35-100mm F2.8 telephoto zoom lens. Hi guys, my name is Matti Sulanto. I'm a photographer and a Lumix ambassador from Helsinki, Finland. And in this video, I'll review this Lumix 35-100mm F2.8 telephoto zoom lens. And this particular lens is not mine. The other day I went to see Focus Nordic's new office. They are the official Lumix importer here in Finland. And there on the table I spotted this lens and I asked them if I can borrow it for a review, and they very kindly agreed. And this is the Mark I version of the lens that came out in 2012 at the same time with the GH3 camera body. And earlier the same year, the Mark I version of the 12-35mm F2.8 also came out. And like I said, this is the Mark I version of the lens that came out in 2012. And there's a Mark II version that came out in 2017. It's a minor update. It has something different with the optical stabilizer and something minor with the focusing motor as well, as far as I know, and some exterior changes. But the optical formula is still the same, and so is the optical performance. So even today this lens is, this Mark I is worth a look. This 35-100mm focal length range is similar to the very popular 70-200 full frame tele photo zoom lens, and obviously Panasonic wanted to make some sort of an equivalent for their Micro Four Thirds cameras. And indeed this kind of a telephoto zoom is very practical and handy and compact, and together with the 12-35mm f2.8, these two make an excellent combination that covers everything from 12 to 100 millimeters at constant f2.8 maximum aperture. Because of the relatively modest zoom range, this kind of a lens can be made really compact even if the maximum aperture is relatively fast f2.8. And I'm gonna start with the build quality, which is really solid and really a pro grade essentially. It's a combination of metal and high quality plastic. And also this lens is weather sealed, and it comes with a hood, which is missing from this lens because this has been a demo lens for many years, and probably somebody decided that they needed the hood, or somehow it's been misplaced. The zoom ring is super smooth and similar to the zoom lens of the 12-35mm f2.8 lens. And it's also worth mentioning that the lens doesn't extend or change its length while zooming, which is kind of nice. It has very little like a practical impact in real-life photography, but somehow it makes the lens feel more professional when it doesn't extend or change its length while zooming in or out. This lens weighs in just over 350 grams without the missing hood. And the filter thread is 58 millimeters. And all in all, it's quite compact for a telephoto zoom lens. And if we compare it to, for example, the Leica 25mm f1.4 prime lens, you can see how really compact this telephoto zoom lens is. And because of its compact size, this lens feels really well balanced, for example, on the G90 camera body where I have it mounted right now. But it also feels really balanced on the G9, for example. But if you mount this, for example, on the GX880 camera or some of the really tiny Lumix camera bodies, it feels a little bit front heavy and not that balanced. But any camera body that has a proper grip and like a proper camera body, this lens feels really nice. The optical construction of this lens is 18 elements in 13 groups, and that includes 2 ED elements and 1 super ED element. So there's quite a bit of glass inside of this small lens. The minimum focusing distance is 85 centimeters, which is quite normal for a zoom like this. But this lens doesn't have any special macro or close-up capabilities, and that 85 centimeters can feel even a bit long at the wide end, but when you zoom into 100 millimeters, you can get some relatively good close-up. This lens has an optical stabilizer built in, and there's also a switch for that on the side of the lens, and this Mark I is dual IS compatible if updated with the latest 1.3 firmware. However, the Mark II version is dual IS2 compatible, and there is something different with the stabilizer on that lens. But I find that also this lens, together with the IBIS, is really well stabilized, and you can shoot quite long handheld exposure times on this lens if you just concentrate a little bit. And at this point, I'd like to show you a few pictures that I shot on this lens, and after that I'll talk about the optical performance of this lens. But before I talk about the sharpness and all the good stuff or the important stuff, please also consider to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, and also consider my channel membership. There's also a link down below. If you join in, you can have some extra benefits or perks. You can, for example, have downloadable RAW files from cameras and lenses that I review on this channel. But now to the optical performance of this lens. This particular lens has been a demo lens for many years, and I suspect this has been dropped at least once during its lifetime because the sharpness is not uniform or symmetrical across the frame, especially at the wide end of the focal length range. So bear that in mind when you look at the pictures or if you download my raw samples. My experience in general is that the Panasonic, Lumix, Leica lenses are usually pretty well in tolerances if you buy a new lens. It's very rare that you get a lens that is not in tolerances or the sharpness is not symmetrical across the frame, based on my experience, that is. But anyway, there's not much to say about the sharpness of this lens because it's sharp at all apertures and at all focal lengths. Of course, the diffraction starts to soften the picture at some point when you go beyond maybe f8 or something, but even the small apertures are still usable if you need all that depth of field for whatever reason. And there are no traces of chromatic aberration at any focal length or at any aperture. They are either corrected optically or in camera electronically or in some RAW developers like Adobe Lightroom. And also the vignetting and distortions are corrected either electronically or optically. I don't really care, but there are no traces of those either. There is of course a little bit of vignetting wide open, but it goes away when you stop down just a little bit. And I've said it many times before, I don't really care if the vignetting or distortions or chromatic aberrations are corrected optically or in camera, as long as I can't see any degradation of image quality because of that. And the autofocus is super fast and accurate. as it is pretty much on every Panasonic Lumix lens. And also the manual focus is quite good for focus by wire system, but I suspect you are not going to be using much manual focus with this lens, especially if you use this for photography, because the autofocus is just so good and accurate and super fast. All in all, I would say this is a really great telephoto zoom lens if 100mm is enough for you. This is well built, it's weather sealed, it has constant f2.8 maximum aperture, and it's sharp. What more can you ask for, really? The only major downside, I guess, is that the zoom range is pretty limited, only from 35 to 100mm. So if you're looking for more like a super zoom coverage, then this is not your lens and you have to find something else. And if you are looking to buy one of these, I think it makes sense, if you buy a new one, it makes sense to buy the Mark II version. But if you can find a good deal on a used Mark I, I think it's really worth picking up. But always remember to check out the used gear, whether it's a lens or a camera body, before you lay down your hard-earned cash. Because, like I said, this lens must have been dropped or something at some point, because it's not the sharpness is not symmetrical all across the frame. But anyway, that's my review of the 35 to 100mm F2.8 Lumix lens. Thank you for watching, and do check out these two videos after this if you're interested. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.